Our special coverage of Rwanda's anniversary of the 1994 genocide continues. We're live now to eNCA Group News Editor Ben Said, who is in Kigali. Ben, good evening. In the lead up to the official commemoration next week, what is the mood in the capital?
Good evening, Aman. Pretty somber, actually. It's only been 20 years. The memories of what happened 2 decades ago are very fresh in the minds of Rwandans. I went through to the main National Memorial site in Kigali today. Workers there are putting the finishing touches on the memorial site itself. Lots of work being done there in preparation for Monday. And President Kagame will lay a wreath for those who died in the genocide 20 years ago on Monday. In the afternoon, there will be a walk of remembrance from Parliament to a local stadium, and then a candlelit vigil in the evening. But yes, people are very somber here. It's not a joyous mood. It's very much a mood of remembrance and commemoration.
Ben, as we've been listening there, Rwanda, like South Africa, has been held up as an example of how to navigate a painful history to reconciliation. What's the broad assessment of the social experiment with victims and perpetrators living side by side?
Yes, it's very difficult and in some ways a very different case from South Africa because, of course, Rwanda was very much a mixed society between Hutu and Tutsis. They lived alongside each other before the genocide, and so it's the case afterwards. The government has had a little bit of a difficult task in the sense of what did it do with all the hundreds of thousands of perpetrators, the hundreds of thousands of killers. It decided to give them amnesty, essentially, in return for admitting to their crimes, but they now are out on the streets, and victims have to live side by side and face the perpetrators on a daily basis, which, of course, does, it must be very difficult for those who survived the genocide. But what is a little different, I think, here in Rwanda as opposed to South Africa is that the Rwandans are a little less reticent to talk about the past. They're very much forward-looking, whereas I think in South Africa we're still focusing very much on our past of apartheid and colonialism, and in Rwanda they're looking a little bit more towards the future. Now, that is obviously a little bit of a different approach, but one that means in this country, I think that a lot has been left unsaid. I think that people are a little bit afraid to talk about the past, and so a lot of unburdening of what happened in this country, I think, still needs to happen. You may argue that it still needs to happen in South Africa as well, but South Africa is a far more open society where people are far less afraid to speak about what's on their minds.
And talking about a closed society, Ben, President Paul Kagame has previously been referred to as a visionary leader by former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, one of the greatest leaders of our time by former US President Bill Clinton. What's his image like locally and globally now?
Well, it's mixed, I have to say. Yes, President Paul Kagame has been praised over the last few years by several global leaders because he's taken on the immensely difficult task of resurrecting this country from the ashes of genocide, and this country has made incredible progress in the last 20 years, socially and politically and economically as well. But there are question marks abroad, certainly, about President Kagame's style of leadership. There isn't a free press here. Politics is not free either. There isn't any real opposition to his Tutsi-led government. And that makes some people wonder about what's going to happen in the years ahead. This is a country that is 85% Hutu, yet it is led by a Tutsi government. Tutsis hold political and economic power in this country, and people wonder whether that is something that is sustainable. So certainly those question marks are being raised about Kagame's leadership abroad. But that conversation is not being had in this country, not openly at least. As I said, the press, NGOs and political parties are very tightly controlled. And for now, people see President Kagame certainly publicly praise him very much for having resurrected this country, and are not talking about whether this is the right time yet for Rwanda to move to a more open society. So very much mixed reactions, I think, both locally and abroad to his rule.
Thank you for that, Ben. eNCA's Group News Editor, Ben said, live for us from Kigali, Rwanda.
Know more about your world.
eNCA.com.